The proposition Harrison Reed adjusted his platinum cufflinks, glancing at the sleek digital clock on his office wall. Another 14-hour day at Reed Innovations was drawing to a close. At 36, he had built a tech empire valued at $11 billion, revolutionizing quantum computing and making him the darling of Silicon Valley. His face had graced the covers of Forbes and Time, and his name appeared regularly on lists of eligible bachelors. Yet for all his success, an unmistakable hollowness followed him like a shadow. "Emma, is the Singapore team briefing ready for tomorrow morning?" Harrison called through the intercom. A moment later, Emma Winters appeared at his doorway, tablet in hand. "I've prepared everything, including contingency talking points if they bring up the supply chain concerns." Harrison nodded, studying his executive assistant. Emma had been with him for 3 years, the longest anyone had survived working, directly under his exacting standards. She was brilliantly efficient, anticipating his needs often before he recognized them himself. Her auburn hair was always neatly styled, her attire impeccably professional. Yet something about her remained unknowable, a quality that both intrigued and frustrated him. "Perfect," he said, leaning back in his ergonomic chair. "One more thing. The Breakthrough Innovation Gala is next Friday." Emma nodded. "I've confirmed your attendance and arranged the car service. Your tuxedo has been pressed and delivered to your penthouse." Harrison drummed his fingers on his desk. The gala was the premier event of the season, where tech innovators, venture capitalists, and industry pioneers gathered to celebrate advancements and forge alliances. Going alone would invite speculation about his personal life, something he preferred to control. "I need a date," he said casually, scrolling through emails on his screen. "Someone presentable, intelligent, who won't embarrass me with the board, members, or journalists." Emma waited, stylus poised over her tablet. "I can contact the agency you've used before. Several of the women from their roster have the appropriate background." Harrison frowned slightly. Hired companions, while discreet and beautiful, felt increasingly hollow. He glanced up at Emma, an idea forming. "Actually, I was thinking you could accompany me," he said, his tone deliberately offhand. "You know all the key players already, and you're familiar with our current projects. It would be convenient." He expected immediate agreement, perhaps even gratitude for the opportunity. After all, the gala was an exclusive event that could advance anyone's career. Instead, Emma's expression remained composed, though something flickered briefly in her hazel eyes. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Reed," she said evenly, "but I must decline." Harrison blinked, certain he had misheard. "Excuse me?" "I'm declining your invitation," Emma repeated, her voice gentle but firm. "I don't wish to attend as a convenience or a business solution." Harrison felt a strange heat rise to his face. Not quite anger, but a mixture of confusion and wounded pride. No one said no to him, especially not employees. "May I ask why?" He found himself saying. Emma met his gaze directly, something she rarely did. "Because I believe that when someone asks me to accompany them to an event like that, it should be because they genuinely want my company, not because I fulfill a functional requirement. I'm your executive assistant, Mr. Reed, not an accessory, with..." That, she placed his schedule for the following day on his desk and quietly left the room, leaving Harrison staring after her, utterly speechless for the first time in years. Unexpected clarity. The Breakthrough Innovation Gala transformed the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art into a technological wonderland. Holographic displays showcased the year's most groundbreaking inventions, while ambient music composed by AI filled the air. Harrison arrived alone, his custom Tom Ford tuxedo impeccable, his smile practiced and confident. Yet as he navigated through clusters of industry elites, he felt oddly untethered. "Harrison Reed flying solo tonight?" "That's a first," remarked Dominic Patel, founder of a rival tech firm, with a knowing smirk. "Trouble in the dating department?" Just focusing on business tonight, Harrison replied smoothly, though the comment stung more than he cared to admit. He'd grown accustomed to people seeing him only as the sum of his success, his wealth, his company, his conquests. Emma's refusal had cracked that carefully constructed image. After an hour of strategic networking, Harrison found himself by the champagne fountain, momentarily escaping conversation. That's when he saw her. Emma stood across the grand hall, engaged in animated discussion with the director of the National Science Foundation. She wore a midnight blue gown that caught the light with subtle iridescence. Her auburn hair swept into an elegant updo. But it was her expression that captivated him. Passionate, intelligent, completely in her element. Harrison frowned, puzzled. Why was his assistant here? He crossed the room, intending to investigate this unexpected development. "Mr. Reed?" Emma acknowledged him with a polite nod as he approached. "I believe you know Dr. Hernandez from the NSF?" Of course. Harrison shook the older man's hand. "I'm curious, though. I wasn't aware you were attending tonight, Emma." Dr. Hernandez beamed. "Ms. Winters is being far too modest. Her work with the STEM mentorship program for underserved communities has been revolutionary. The foundation specifically requested her presence tonight as we're considering expanding her curriculum nationwide." Harrison stared at Emma, genuinely surprised. "Mentorship program?" Emma smiled slightly. "It's something I do on weekends. The program pairs girls from low-income neighborhoods with women in technology fields. Emma developed an algorithm that matches mentors and students based on complementary learning styles and career interests," Dr. Hernandez continued enthusiastically. "The retention rates are unprecedented. We're featuring it in our annual report." Harrison listened, feeling increasingly disoriented. How had he not known this about someone who organized every minute of his professional life? He'd always viewed Emma as exceptionally competent, but he realized now he'd never considered her ambitions, her passions, her life outside his company. "That's impressive," he managed. "If you'll excuse me," Emma said, "I promised to speak with some of the program graduates who are here tonight." As she walked away, Harrison found himself watching her, not as his assistant, but as a woman of substance navigating the room with quiet confidence. She stopped to speak with several young women in their early 20s, clearly former students from her program. The genuine admiration in their eyes as they spoke with her stirred something unfamiliar in Harrison. "She's quite remarkable, isn't she?" said a voice beside him. Vivian Chen, one of his board members, had appeared at his elbow. "I've been trying to poach Emma for my foundation for years, but she's stubbornly loyal to Reed Innovations." "You have?" Harrison couldn't mask his surprise. Vivian raised an eyebrow. "You didn't know? Emma has standing offers from at least 3 major companies and 2 nonprofits. She could easily double her salary elsewhere." The revelation hit Harrison like a physical blow. He'd always assumed Emma stayed because of the prestige of working for him. The possibility that she might have chosen to remain out of loyalty, despite better opportunities, had never occurred to him. Throughout the remainder of the evening, Harrison found his attention repeatedly drawn to Emma. She moved through the crowd with natural grace, engaging meaningfully with scientists, philanthropists, and students alike. Not once did she approach him or hover nearby as she might have as his assistant. For the first time, Harrison Reed, accustomed to being the most important person in any room, felt strangely invisible, and surprisingly, his wounded pride was giving way to something else entirely, genuine curiosity about the woman he had clearly underestimated for far too long. Beyond appearances. The Monday following the gala, Harrison arrived at the office earlier than usual. His weekend had been uncharacteristically reflective, Emma's words and presence at the gala replaying in his mind. He found himself standing outside her modest office adjacent to his own, coffee cup in hand, observing her through the glass partition. Emma was completely absorbed in her work, fingers flying across her keyboard, a small crease of concentration between her brows. Her desk, unlike the minimalist aesthetic of his own, contained personal touches. A small potted succulent, a framed photograph, and what appeared to be handmade thank you cards propped against her monitor. Harrison knocked lightly before entering. "Good morning?" Emma looked up, momentarily surprised. "Mr. Reed, you're in early today." "I brought you coffee," he said, setting down the cup beside her. "Black with a hint of cinnamon, right?" The flicker of surprise in her eyes confirmed what he'd suspected. He'd never bothered to learn how she took her coffee, despite her memorizing his precise preferences years ago. "Thank you," she said, her tone measured. "The Singapore team sent over revised projections. I've highlighted the discrepancies for your review." Harrison nodded, but didn't reach for the tablet she offered. Instead, he gestured to the cards on her desk. "From your students?" Emma's expression softened slightly. "Yes. We had our end-of-semester showcase yesterday. The girls presented their tech projects to industry professionals." "Tell me about it," Harrison said, leaning against her doorframe. She hesitated, clearly weighing whether this was a genuine request or mere politeness. 17 girls from across 5 underserved school districts developed prototype solutions for community problems. Bianca created an app that helps elderly residents coordinate grocery deliveries. Jasmine designed a pollution sensor network for her neighborhood near the industrial district. As Emma spoke, her professional reserve melted away, replaced by unmistakable pride. Harrison found himself genuinely engaged, asking questions about the girls' projects and Emma's teaching methods. "Why didn't you ever mention this program to me?" he asked finally. "Reed Innovations could have provided resources, equipment." Emma considered her answer carefully. "I suppose I've always kept my personal projects separate from work. And honestly, Mr. Reed, you've never shown interest in my life outside the office." The truth of her statement landed heavily. 3 years of working closely together, and he had never once asked about her aspirations or interests. "I'd like to see the program sometime," he said, "if that's all right with you." Something unreadable crossed her face. "The next workshop is Wednesday evening. I can send you the details." Later that week, Harrison found himself in a renovated community center in a neighborhood he'd driven past countless times but never entered. He felt conspicuously out of place in his casual designer clothes among the worn furniture and outdated computers. Emma stood at the front of the room in jeans and a simple blouse, guiding a dozen teenage girls through the fundamentals of coding. Her teaching style was patient but challenging, completely different from her efficient professional demeanor. The girls clearly adored her, competing for her attention and beaming at her praise. Harrison observed from the back, struck by how alive Emma seemed here, laughing, gesturing expressively, completely in her element. One girl struggled with her assignment, frustration evident on her face. Emma crouched beside her, speaking softly, pointing at the screen. Within minutes, the girl's expression transformed from despair to triumph. "You must be Mr. Reed," said a voice beside him. An older woman with silver-streaked hair extended her hand. "I'm Luisa Ortega, Center Director. Emma mentioned you might stop by. We're grateful for her program. Enrollment in our tech classes has tripled since she started volunteering." "How long has she been doing this?" Harrison asked. "Almost 5 years now. Started when she was still finishing her master's degree. Turned down a prestigious fellowship to keep the program running." Luisa gave him an appraising look. "She's quite remarkable." Harrison watched as Emma high-fived a student who had solved a particularly challenging problem. "Yes," he said quietly. "She is." When the session ended, Harrison helped stack chairs as the students departed. Emma approached, a questioning look on her face. "What did you think?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "I think I've been blind." Harrison replied honestly. I had no idea you were capable of this. He gestured around the room. There's a lot you don't know about me, Mr. Reed, Emma said, a small smile playing at her lips. I'm more than just the person who manages your calendar. For the first time, Harrison Reed, billionaire, tech visionary, man who thought he had everything figured out, felt like he was seeing clearly. And what he saw both humbled and intrigued him beyond measure. Walls coming down. The atmosphere between Harrison and Emma shifted subtly over the following weeks. Small changes appeared in their daily interactions, Harrison asking her opinion during strategy meetings, Emma sharing occasional insights about her students' progress. The rigid professional boundary between them didn't disappear, but it softened, became more permeable. One evening, Harrison found Emma still at her desk long after the office had emptied. Rain streamed down the floor to ceiling, windows casting rippling shadows across her focused face. It's nearly 9, he said from her doorway. Whatever it is can wait until morning. Emma looked up, blinking as if emerging from deep concentration. I'm actually not working on company business. I'm finalizing grant applications for the program. The deadline's tomorrow. Harrison moved closer, glancing at her screen. You're requesting a surprisingly small amount. It's realistic for our size, she explained. We need new laptops and software licenses. The current equipment is practically antique. Harrison hesitated, then asked, May I see the proposal? Emma regarded him with mild surprise before turning her screen toward him. He read through the meticulously crafted document, impressed by her clear vision and practical approach. This is good work, he said finally, but you're thinking too small. What would you do with 10 times this amount? Emma's eyebrows rose. That's not realistic. Humor me, Harrison insisted, perching on the edge of her desk, something he'd never done before. A spark lit in Emma's eyes as she considered the possibility. We'd expand to 5 more districts, create an advanced track for returning students, develop a college scholarship fund. Her voice quickened with excitement. Build a dedicated tech lab instead of borrowing space, maybe even hire a part-time coordinator so I could focus more on curriculum development. Harrison watched her animated, expression transfixed by this passionate version of Emma he was still getting to know. Write that proposal instead, he said quietly. Emma's excitement faded, replaced by wariness. Harrison, I don't want charity because I work for you. He noted her use of his first name, a rare occurrence that felt significant. It's not charity. It's investment in proven talent. Your program has measurable results, and Reed Innovations has an education foundation that's been underutilized. I'd need to think about it, Emma said carefully. Harrison nodded, respecting her hesitation. Of course. He paused, then added, Have you eaten dinner? The question hung between them, laden with implications neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Emma studied him for a long moment. No, I haven't. Neither have I. There's a Thai place around the corner that stays open late. He maintained a casual tone, though his heart beat unexpectedly faster. Is this a business dinner, Mr. Reed? Emma asked, her expression unreadable. Harrison met her gaze directly. No, Emma, it's just dinner. Between 2 people who might like to know each other better. Something shifted in her expression. Caution giving way to curiosity. In that case, she said, shutting down her computer, I'd like that. The small restaurant was warm and fragrant, tucked away from the sleek financial district. Sitting across from Emma in the softly lit space, Harrison realized he'd never shared a meal with her outside of working lunches or corporate events. You know everything about me, Harrison said as they waited for their food. My schedule, my preferences, probably my blood type, but I know embarrassingly little about you. Emma smiled slightly. What would you like to know? Everything, he answered honestly, starting with why you turned down that fellowship Louisa mentioned. Their conversation flowed with surprising ease. Emma spoke of growing up in a working-class neighborhood, her determined mother who worked double shifts as a nurse, her scholarship to Berkeley, her decision to create the mentorship program after seeing talented girls in her community with no pathway to tech careers. Harrison found himself sharing, too, not the polished stories he told at industry panels, but real experiences. His early failures before Reed Innovations took off, the loneliness that accompanied success, the realization that many people in his life valued what he could provide rather than who he was. "Is that why you asked me to the gala?" Emma questioned, her voice gentle but direct. "Because I was convenient?" Harrison considered deflecting, but found himself answering truthfully. "Initially, yes. But I've been thinking about what you said. About being seen as a person, not a function." He met her gaze. "I'm trying to see you now, Emma, the real you." Rain continued to fall outside as they lingered over tea, neither seeming eager to end the evening. When Harrison finally walked Emma to her car, an unfamiliar feeling settled in his chest. Not the confident certainty he projected in business, but something more vulnerable and authentic. "Thank you for dinner," Emma said, keys in hand. "Thank you for saying no to me," Harrison replied unexpectedly. "It might be the most valuable rejection I've ever received." Emma's smile, genuine and unguarded, stayed with him long after her taillights disappeared into the rainy night. For the first time in years, Harrison Reed went home feeling not like a billionaire tech mogul, but simply like a man discovering something, someone, of true value. A partnership of equals. The Reed Innovations annual charity benefit took place at the California Academy of Sciences, transforming the Natural History Museum into an elegant venue that buzzed with the energy of 600 elite guests. Harrison stood near the entrance, subconsciously adjusting his bow tie while greeting arriving board members. 6 months had passed since that rainy night dinner with Emma. 6 months of gradual, meaningful change. Their professional relationship remained intact, but something deeper had developed alongside it. Weekly dinners had become a quiet tradition. Harrison had become a regular visitor at the mentorship program, now housed in a renovated space funded by the Reed Foundation. Emma had begun contributing ideas to company initiatives, her unique perspective bringing fresh approaches to long-standing challenges, yet neither had put a name to what was evolving between them. Harrison, for all his business boldness, found himself uncharacteristically cautious, unwilling to risk the delicate trust they'd built. "Harrison, the sustainability presentation is ready whenever you want to begin," said his new executive assistant, Theo. Emma had transitioned to Director of Community Innovation 3 months prior, a position Harrison had created specifically to leverage her talents while giving her the authority to expand her educational initiatives under the company umbrella. The role change had initially raised eyebrows among the executive team, but Emma had quickly silenced skeptics with her results. "Is Emma here yet?" Harrison asked, scanning the growing crowd. "I haven't seen her," Theo replied. "But the planetarium setup is complete for your announcement." Harrison nodded, checking his watch. The evening's centerpiece would be the unveiling of Reed Innovations' most ambitious community initiative to date, a program Emma had conceptualized that would bring cutting-edge technology education to 50 underserved schools nationwide. The crowd continued to grow, but Emma remained absent. Harrison found himself checking the entrance with increasing frequency, an unfamiliar anxiety building. This wasn't like her. His phone buzzed with a text. "Traffic accident on Bay Bridge. Stuck in gridlock. So sorry. Start without me if needed." Harrison frowned at the message. The announcement was supposed to be their shared moment, the culmination of months of Emma's visionary work. Starting without her felt wrong. He made a swift decision, slipping away from the gala and instructing Theo to delay the presentation. 20 minutes later, Harrison's driver navigated through side streets, eventually reaching the bridge's approach where traffic stood completely still. Harrison spotted Emma's red sedan several cars ahead. Without hesitation, he left his vehicle and walked between the stalled cars, ignoring surprised looks from other drivers. Emma's expression when she saw him approaching through her side mirror was worth every step. "Harrison?" she exclaimed as he reached her car. "What are you doing here?" "I'm not doing the announcement without you," he said simply. "It's your vision, your achievement." Emma shook her head in disbelief. "But all those people, the schedule, can..." "Wait," Harrison finished. He opened her passenger door and slid in beside her. "We're partners in this, Emma. Equal partners." The word hung between them, laden with meaning beyond the professional context. "I've been thinking," Harrison continued, suddenly determined to speak what had remained unspoken for months, "about that night you declined my invitation to the gala. You said you didn't want to be someone's display piece, that if I wanted you there, it should be because I saw you." Emma watched him, her expression softening. "I remember. I didn't see you then." "Not really," Harrison admitted. "But I do now." He reached for her hand, a gesture he'd never allowed himself before. "And what I see is the most remarkable person I've ever known." Emma's fingers tightened around his. "It took you long enough," she said, a smile playing at her lips. "I'm a slow learner in some areas," Harrison acknowledged. "But I'm hoping it's not too late to ask properly this time." He took a breath. "Emma Winters, would you consider being my date tonight? Not as my employee, not as a convenience, but as the woman I've fallen in love with?" The traffic remained at a standstill around them, but inside Emma's car, the world seemed to hold its breath. "Yes," she answered simply, her eyes bright with emotion. "Though we might not make it back in time at this rate." Harrison grinned, pulling out his phone. "I may have a solution for that." 45 minutes later, the gala attendees gathered. In the planetarium were treated to an unexpected spectacle. Harrison and Emma arrived not through the main entrance, but via helicopter on the museum's living roof, making their way down to the event hand in hand. As they stood together on the stage, introducing the initiative that would change thousands of young lives, the assembled crowd saw what had become clear to both of them. This wasn't just a business partnership or a romantic relationship, but something rarer, a true meeting of equals, each made better by the other's presence. Later, that evening, as they danced beneath the planetarium's starlit dome, Emma leaned close to Harrison's ear. "You know, most people would have just waited for me to arrive eventually," she said. "Coming to find me on that bridge was rather dramatic." Harrison smiled, drawing her closer. "I spent too many years thinking I had everything I needed. I wasn't about to waste another minute once I realized what was truly valuable." Around them, San Francisco's elite continued their socializing, deals were made, reputations managed. But for Harrison Reed, who once measured worth in billions, success had taken on a new definition. It wasn't about having everything money could buy, but about being worthy of something money couldn't, the love of a woman who had seen his true self and chosen him anyway. And as Emma smiled up at him, Harrison knew with absolute certainty that this, not his fortune or his company, was his greatest achievement.